Good afternoon and welcome to another of the Veterans Forum programs. Today it's a kind of a special one. Today is the 1st of October 2008. The program you're seeing right now, we're doing this introduction at the studios here in Frederick Drive. But the program itself, with all of the equipment, all the help, will be out there at the Pittsfield International Airport as the Wings of Freedom circle and land here in Pittsfield. There are 4 vintage aircraft, and then hopefully it'll bring back some wonderful memories to a lot of the guys and gals who couldn't show up, which is why we're doing this special for you and also for us, because we met some wonderful old guys. And when I say old, the average age of the 4 guys that I interviewed was 90. One of them had his birthday yesterday, 90 years old. Another one was 91, 89, and then I'm the kid. I'm only 84. The program is designed to give you a chance to see back what used to be, in the old days as we call it, the aircraft that flew around the world in defense of our country and freedom. Hopefully it'll stir some of you to come and join us here at the studio to share your story as to what you did during the war, any war, not just World War II, but Korea, Vietnam, Desert Storm, and even today if you are allowed to come and do it. Again, if you're interested, call me. My home phone number is 637-0793. Just don't call after midnight, the wife gets excited. Or call the studio at 445-4234 and ask for anybody who'll answer the phone. They're all volunteers, they're all eager and anxious to do a good job. So please, if you are so convinced, come and see us. We need you, we want you, and we'll do all we can to make it a pleasant trip. Again, sit back and enjoy it. Have a good time. And here we go, folks. Pittsfield International Airport. And there is all of the goodies that we have to put up. That's where I'll be doing the interviewing, we hope. And we're all sweat. And there we are, giving a high angle shot so we get coverage of the planes coming in, taxiing, and then tying off. This is going to be a production. And all of this stuff in back here is going to be out here when we get set up, once they find out where they're going to tie down the planes, park them, and then we go off to the races. We've got this thing covered so that no matter which way they come in, we'll be able to pick up any of the landings. The only trouble we have right now is not knowing exactly when and which of the aircraft will make it. There's some thought that the B-25 is having engine trouble. We'll find out later on today. And this is the North American P-51 Charlie Mustang. It had a maximum speed of 440 miles an hour, a range to Berlin and back from wherever it took off. The service ceiling was 30,000 feet. Voted by the History Channel to be the best fighter aircraft ever made. The Collins Foundation's P-51 Mustang is the only dual-control C model in the world. Our P-51 Mustang, named Betty Jane, flies escort with the bombers on the National Wings of Freedom tour. The B-17 Flying Fortress. The Collins Foundation's Flying Fortress was built in Long Beach, California by the Douglas Aircraft Company and accepted on April 7, 1945. Although she was too late for combat, all number 44-83575 did serve as part of the Air-Sea First Rescue Squadron and later in the Military Air Transport Service, or as we used to call it, MATS. In April of 1953, all number 44 was instrumented and subjected to the effects of 3 different nuclear explosions. After a 13-year cool-down period, number 44 was sold as part of an 800-ton scrap pile, and Aircraft Specialties Company began the restoration of the aircraft. After much hard work and pure determination, The jeers and laughter of those who said she would never fly again faded as the sounds of four 1,200 horsepower Wright Cyclone engines echoed across the desert, and Yucca Lady, as she was named, rose into the sky. For 20 years, without a major problem or incident, number 44 served as a fire bomber, dropping water and borate on forest fires. She was sold in January 1986 to the Collins Foundation. Restored back to her original wartime configuration by Tom Riley Vintage Aircraft, she represented one of the best B-17 restorations and won several awards. The Collins Foundation B-17 was named 909 in honor of a 91st Bomb Group 323rd Squadron plane of the same name, which amazingly completed 140 missions without an abort or loss of a crewman. And this is the consolidated B-24 Liberator, the world's only fully restored and flying consolidated B-24J Liberator is flying over America on its new mission, living history. The B-24 fought for our freedoms in the skies of Europe and the Pacific, and its mission of strategic bombing during World War II. Under the British flag, the Foundation's B-24 saw combat in the Pacific Theater as KH-191 in operations ranging from anti-shipping to bombing and resupply of resistance forces operations. At the war's end, the aircraft was abandoned by the RAF in a bomber graveyard in Kanpur, India. However, in 1948, the Indian Air Force succeeded in restoring 36 B-24s, including old number 44-44052, to operational status. These aircraft were utilized until 1968. For the next 13 years, the aircraft sat abandoned in India until a British aircraft collector obtained it in 1981 and transported it back to England. Dr. Robert F. Collins purchased the B-24 in 1984. After a sea voyage of 3 weeks, the B-24 arrived in Boston and was brought to Stowe, Massachusetts, in 4 truckloads. After more than 5 years of hard work and some 97,000 plus hours of labor and sweat, the B-24 flew for the first time after restoration on September 10, 1989. In 2005, the B-24 was repainted as Witchcraft, which honors the veterans of the 8th Air Force that flew in the European theater during World War II. Witchcraft flew an incredible 130 combat missions with various crews and never once turned back while on a mission and never had any crewmen injured or killed. The North American B-25 Mitchell bomber, named after General Billy Mitchell. The Collins Foundation B-25 Mitchell was built at the North American Aviation Factory in Kansas City, Kansas, as serial number 44-28932 and was accepted by the United States Army Air Corps on August 3, 1944. Instead of heading for combat, number 44 served in the United States as part of the AAF Flying Training Command for the remainder of the war. Her training duties continued after the war at over 12 different bases in the United States until January of 1959, when old number 44 was dropped from USAF inventory as surplus and purchased by Earl Dodge of Anchorage, Alaska. Over the next 25 years, B-25 number 44 flew as a civilian-operated forest firefighting aircraft in the Pacific Northwest. Though the job she performed was not glorious, it was far better than the fate of many other B-25s that faced the torch in surplus storage yards for their scrap value in aluminum. Thousands of B-25s met this fate after the end of World War II. First called the Hughes-Honey, the B-25 was operated by Collins Foundation in the Boston area for over 10 years. In a move to preserve the aircraft and refresh it from its years of operation, The Collings Foundation took the B-25 to Carl Scrow of Aero Trader Incorporated in late 2001. After work was completed, the B-25 was flown to Midland, Texas to be repainted by AV Source West as Tondaleo, a famous B-25 that flew in the Air Apaches, or the 345th Bomb Group, 500th Bomb Squadron of the 5th Air Force in the Pacific Theater against targets in New Guinea. The Collings Foundation Tondaleo flies on in tribute to the crews of the 500th and the many more crews that operated the B-25 in defense of freedom during World War II. Good afternoon, folks. We're here at Pittsfield International Airport. We just had a fly-in, the 17, 24 Mustang, and the 25. Joe Whalen, passenger on the 25. This was his 66th mission. The other 65 were back during the war. Young fellow beside me is Bob Jones, and I'm going to have him introduce him to you, and then let him tell you some of the stuff. He's got some stuff he just happened to have with him to give you some idea of who he was and what he did way back when. Robert, you're on.
Oh, my goodness. I'll show just a picture of myself with a clue. And here I am down here.
Okay.
I'm a pilot in this case. There's my tail gunner, Shorty Demery. I don't remember all of the names.
That's okay.
It was back a year or two.
Now, where was that taken? Where is it? In the States or overseas?
I imagine overseas. I don't know. You know, it's so long ago that...
I know this guy doesn't want to tell you all this stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
It could very well have been overseas.
All right. But at least we take a shot at it. Now,
Like,
how many of these guys are left? Do they ever have any reunions at all?
Not at all, no.
Oh, no.
I've never had any... Navigator, Bombardier, Roy. Crusher, Shorty Demery, and engineer, waist gunner.
You're a tall dude for a waist gunner.
Huh?
You got to pull his head in, huh? Now, where's this? Where were you, in the European theater or the Pacific?
Pacific.
Or both?
This Pacific. I think this is Okinawa.
Okay, Okinawa?
Yeah. Well, that would have been where we were flying out of.
I've got a story to tell you that's absolutely phenomenal. I just happened to be in Okinawa when they opened up for business, and them guys that were there before us didn't want anybody to come in, and they gave us a bad time for a long time. Years afterwards, my daughter was getting married to some guy named Bill Watson, whose father was a navigator on a B, and he flew out of Yantan. And I had a picture of his ship. I just swapped it, being a CB, we swapped back and forth. Anyway, I just wanted to finish that story. When the father-in-law to be and I met at the wedding invitation dinner, the pre-wedding thing, I showed him some of my old photographs, and one of them was of a 24 flying out of Yantan. And he looked and said, "Where did you get that?" And I said, "Why?" He said, "That was my squadron." 62 years before that, we didn't know each other existed, and now we're a-hole buddies.
God, how old am I now, Alice? 86.
Oh, just a kid. Just a kid.
Well, no, but
But that was great. Now, what have you been doing? Just kind of filling a little time here.
Well, I taught school.
Where? To whom?
At the Berkshire Farm School for Boys.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Over in Sheffield? Is that right? Oh, no, I'm not allowed to talk about New York. No. Okay, go ahead. What was your subject?
We're from Lebanon.
Okay.
And
is that where you live now?
Yes. Although, at one time, I even taught flying PT-17.
Oh.
Do you remember the PT-17 at all?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was primary trainer.
Primary trainer, yeah.
Yeah, but I get scared.
Why?
I couldn't wait to fly a 24. That was scary, teaching flying.
More engines anyway.
Like come down, to hit the ground.
Yeah, okay.
You get a student.
Now, what of the training that you can't adapt too much pilot training into teaching industrial arts, but how were you able to relate what you did back to some of the kids? They ever ask you, hey, what did you do during the war?
Oh, yeah. Well, the minute you say you're a pilot, And B-24, wow, that,
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
Hey, it's big
that was
duty.
impressive.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Multi-engine, heavy duty, and all that good
yeah,
stuff.
sure, yeah.
How many missions did you fly?
I don't know.
Okay.
We just went and,
I know.
Well, Bob, you're in the pictures.
Okay.
There may be a
Here we go. Now, you got a good shot of that? I'd
Okay.
like Bob, we have a citation here that I think should be read loud and clear. Will you please?
Now, this is something my father got when I was in the service, and
Want me to read it, or do you want to read it?
No, Bob, let him read it.
you'll have to read it.
Okay. You got a shot of that good and clear? Okay, yeah, and I quote, Headquarters, Far East Air Force, Office of the Commanding General, 4 December, 1945. Dear Mr. Jones, recently I had the pleasure of awarding your son, Lieutenant Robert W. Jones, an Air Medal for meritorious achievement in an aerial flight over the Tsushima Straits in Japan on 13 August 1945. Lieutenant Jones was a member of the B-24 aircraft which made night attacks against the Japanese shipping in the Tsushima Straits. They made 2 runs over a 4,000-ton enemy freighter transport, and the explosion from their 500-pound bombs caused the vessel to explode and sink. Flying through the anti-aircraft fire, which tore several holes in the tail of their plane, they bombed another 4,000-ton Japanese freighter transport and scored a direct hit, which sank the vessel. Tasks performed by men such as yourself have been vital to the success of our operations, and their demonstration of unusual initiative and devotion to duty is very worthy of recognition. Amen. I'd like to tell you how genuinely proud I am to have men such as yourself in my command, your son, okay? How gratified I am that their efforts enabled the Far East Air Force to play a decisive role in the winning of the war. You, Mr. Jones, are a very happy person to share with pride and gratification. Sincerely, George W. Kenney, General, United States Army Commanding. Not too shabby for a little kid. You what, about 22 or 23 at the time?
At the moment, yeah,
Yeah,
probably.
he's an old man at 20-something. Okay. Now, hello again, and this is another one of the young fellows who just happened to be out here at Pittsfield International today. And Mike, and I had to pronounce it because he wrote it for me, Rochelieu is going to give us some of his history. He very reluctantly didn't want to say a word, but the more we talked, the better we thought. It's good for him. It'll be wonderful for us. He just happened to have 400 or 500 photographs, but very quickly, I'll let him introduce himself and give you a general idea of what he did when he was in the service and where he served. You ready? You're on.
What do I say?
Just whatever comes in your mind. Where were you born and all that kind of stuff? When did you go in the service? How long were you there and everything?
I was in, first of all, I started out with the National Guards Company I of Pittsfield. I was in the infantry. And I stayed with the National Guards until the war broke out.
That's World War II.
Yeah, World War II.
We got to date them.
Yeah, and we went from the National Guards when the war broke out down to Florida to do submarine duty, to go along the shore to check anything that was lights that were showing out toward the ocean and all that and everything. And then they gave a notice that there were a shortage of gunners and air pilots, and anybody that wanted to volunteer could try to join up and get into the Air Force. They could use you. So I put my name in with 5 other guys, and we went on to some maneuvers in South Carolina, and all of a sudden we got a notice to go before the Air Force Columbia Army Air Base in Columbia, South Carolina to be interviewed. So they took the whole 5 of us. Then we went to gunnery school at Myrtle Beach for training, gunnery training. And then we reported back to South Carolina Army Air Base. And we stayed there until some pilots come along that were also training and picked out crews. And I was selected with one of the crews. And my pilot's name was Elmer Nutting. He was from El Paso, Texas. And my radio man, he picked him out. He was from Massillon, Ohio. And my navigator was Zollinger, and he was from New Mexico. And Who else am I missing? Oh, Robert Jones, and he was from Ohio, Massillon, Ohio. So anyhow, we went there and we trained around the state for a while, and then we flew cross country to El Paso, Texas. And we laid over for 2 days there, and from there we picked up wing tanks and loaded, especially fixed a B-25. There was 3 of us, 2 other crews besides our crew, flew over to Hawaii at Hickam Field. And as we stayed there for a little while, and it was right after the bombing of Pearl Harbor, and we stayed there for a while, and then we flew from there over to Townsville, Australia. Townsville, Australia, and from there we stayed there for a little while, and then my pilot was sent ahead to get some experience in combat, and he had gone for 2 weeks or so. We were laying around in Townsville, Australia, and then we went after they brought him back, and after that we picked him up, and we stayed together from there on. We flew from Townsville to Moresby, New Guinea. We got in Port Moresby, New Guinea, and flew out of there on some missions, and then we moved from there up to Nadzab, New Guinea. And then we stayed in Nadzab and flew missions out of there, and we kept moving up to the islands. And we went from there to Alandria, to Biak, and then from Biak up into the Philippines. And we went in the southern part of the Philippines, at Mindanao, and we flew missions out of the Philippines, and quite a few missions out of there, and into the Celebes and all the islands around there. I can't name them all off. There's tons of them.
There's too many of the damn things.
So then, as we were we went to one of the islands, in Jefferson Island it was called, and the Japs were bringing in a whole batch of new fighter planes and bombers and everything, getting ready for a big battle. And we got intelligence information on it, so we gave it a big hit with 24s, 17s, and B-25s. So there's quite a air battle going on up there. So we got smacked with one of the anti-aircraft shells into the turret. And it took off the top of the dome of the turret, smashed the turret, and I got knocked to the floor from the compact hitting it in there. And,
didn't catch you though, did it?
Didn't. I got a few pieces of shrapnel, very small, like superficial. They were just skin things, little pieces.
But you got hit.
Got hit. So
That's
anyhow,
it.
the plane got hit the worst. And we had a compartment with an air life thing in a boat in case you had to crash or into the ocean. And that went flying through the air and knocked that whole compartment out and everything. So we got one engine knocked out. So the pilot says, well, I don't know. He says, we might have to ditch you. And we couldn't ditch you. And we were afraid. I said, I can't swim. I said, I hope we don't ditch. I'm not going to go down. And we were talking with the throat mics we had on. So I said, well, he said, well, there's an island near. He said that the Aussies just took over. He says, I think I can make it. So we threw some of our stuff out, lightened the plane.
Yeah, lightened it right out.
And we brought it down. He brought it down. He was an expert pilot. And he brought it down, and we got out of it, and stayed there for a couple of days, and they patched me up, looked me over, and I wasn't hurt that bad at all. I mean, not too bad. So anyhow, we stayed there a couple of days, and the Aussies took us back to our home base, which was back down into Nadzab, and that was one of our closest calls. So that's all I can remember on that part.
You can't get any closer when you got shrapnel in your butt. I don't care where the hell you're flying.
So that was one of our closest calls.
Yeah.
So we did have one incident that was funny at times, and it wasn't. We were coming back from a mission, and we had a parafrag get stuck in the Bombay, and it was wiggling around, swinging around in there and everything, And so we finally got it loose and come down and everything, so everything worked out all right.
Everything works out fine.
Yeah, so, so that's it. So what else?
Well, roughly in numbers, any idea how many missions you flew before you qualified to come home?
We have, over in the Pacific, there was a thing, if you flew 50 missions, they would ground you. And that's what I flew, 50 missions, combat missions, as you call it. So we flew other missions that like weather things and weather reports and recons and stuff like that and everything. So we flew them and everything. So
do you have any one or two that really stand out that no matter what you talk about, they kind of make you shiver all over?
Well, not really. The big one.
Well, that's okay. You don't have to be a hero.
The big one was the Jefferson Island. Was my closest call that I can remember and everything. Flew through. Well, they had Mission, yes, that was real scary. We went out on one mission, and there were different missions. They were sent on 3 different missions. We went on one, there was 2 other missions. We had the whole outfit. We had the 24s and all of them up in the air at that time. And as the weather broke, we had a real bad tropical storm. And it was blacker than hell. The air and everything was black, and it was thunder and lightning and really windstorms and everything. So anyhow, when the report came out, we lost 32 airplanes. They called it Black Sunday.
Wow.
And I've got a thing home that tells about the story. And we made it back. Our plane made it back. And when we landed, I said, "Where the hell is everybody?" I looked on the field, and the planes were, we're coming into our home base. Well, some of them did make it.
Yeah.
There was one pilot, he was our wingman, and the pilot's name was Stapleton, and his crew, the only one I knew good was the radio man. His name was, forgot his name now, so, on the West Coast, anyhow, he came from. But they happened to belly flop into the ocean near an island, and on that island happened to be a friendly Aussies, and there was a religious missionary there, and they took them in, took care of them, and they reported back.
Great.
But we lost quite a few guys there, so there's a big story, and I can't tell the whole thing.
Now, where were you when the war was ended, if you were at to drop the bomb in Nagasaki? Were you in the Philippines, or were you coming
No,
home
I was
stateside?
home. I came
Good.
home, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. They sent us home, and I wound up coming home on a ship. I don't know, a Liberty ship or whatever you call them, whatever it is.
The USS, thank God.
Yeah. And they brought us back on that, and we come into San Francisco, Angel Island first.
Okay, yeah.
And
What kind of a welcome did you get?
Well, God, no, it wasn't too bad at all. Good welcome. Yeah, there was,
Makes you feel good.
Yeah, it really did. So we stayed there, God, quite a while, I guess, I don't know, about a month or so, I guess, on an island. And then I went to San Francisco, and they give you time off.
Oh, yeah.
And come across there.
And all that good stuff.
So then we come across country by train. That was a rough ride,
the
that
rough
damn
ride,
train,
yeah.
all across country by train. Oh, my, I could look forever, seemed forever. So then we got to Camp Devens, down in Mass here.
Yeah. Get discharged there?
And I got discharged there.
Great.
They had a point system at the time.
Yeah.
I got out on points, so I got out on points. So that was how I got out. And of course, I got out and got married.
Oh, from one battle into another one. Huh?
Yeah.
Okay, and did you survive the both of them?
Well, I'm here.
Okay. Okay. Now, just if you want, just real quickly, maybe 1 or 2 shots here. So
You ain't got to see all this stuff.
I just want to get you kind of warmed up, so when we get together on the program, we can really have some fun. There you are here, right?
Yeah, that's.
Okay. You can't see it, but they have all kinds of little notes that everybody, you're not supposed to have a diary, and you weren't supposed to take notes, and you weren't supposed to have any identification. But you'd be surprised how many people have these, and it's history that will never be doubted.
My wife wrote all this stuff in, and and about
good.
this. So this is a plane that on that one of the islands. I don't know which one it was. The pilot was shooting at it as we were strafing. We did an awful lot of strafing, and he was strafing. And after he went by, he had the tail guns on, and I strafed. So we both whacked at it, and that's what we seen when we went from the. And I had a camera also under the turret. And that's how these pictures were taken.
Okay, now, that was an official camera, or just one you just happened to find?
It was hooked to the plane.
All right.
And the pilot would call back on a lot of the missions, and he'd say, "Turn on the camera." Then intelligence would take these pictures
and
or
then
something.
review them. Right.
Of course, then they took them out to the public, I guess. So these are just some of the shots of the missions we were on as we were flying along different places.
Other places.
Yeah.
91. Okay. When next we meet, my buddy,
so this
we're going to have some fun with
ain't
these.
too many.
Okay?
So there's just a few here.
I know, but everyone's important.
Yeah.
That's the big thing.
That's an infantry picture there when I was in the infantry. I was a expert rifleman. Those are all expert medals. I could knock a fly off a flagpole.
Ruin a lot of flagpoles. How old are you?
Well, I'm 90 years old today.
Well, good. Boy, you're well preserved for an old goat, huh?
Yeah, well.
And you're alive and kicking.
Yeah, I'm right in there, boy.
90, huh?
Yeah.
That's my grandson.
Today.
That's all them with the 0.
Yeah.
I thank you very much.
Okay.
Waldo Myers, he used to fly around in the Pacific. Had a few airplanes with him and under him and a lot of good guys. He's a radio navigator. And I'll let him tell you what he did when he was in the service and some of the good things, if you care to, please. Okay?
Yeah.
And we welcome you.
Well, mainly, I just put in say about 32 and a half missions in the South Pacific with the Flying Circus, the 80th Bomb Group. It was operated out of Mindoro, Philippines, and most of our bombing runs were out to Formosa.
Oh, right up at the mainland, then?
Yeah, and we flew a couple of CBI, China, Burma, India missions.
Did you go over the hump?
What?
Did you go over the hump? Flying over the...
I don't know whether we went over the hump or not. We went over a lot of humps.
Yeah.
Mountains. But I don't remember going over the hump. But it's mostly up and down the coastline of Formosa. And it's now a different name.
Were they bombing missions? I know it's bombing. We don't have to worry about it being secured now anymore.
They were all bombing missions.
Yep.
And the one mission we had we went to Borneo, Balikpapan. We'd retake the oil fields down there, and in that mission it was coordinated effort with the Navy and the Air Force. And we had a mission down there to rendezvous with them, and on the way back we ran out of gas and we had to bail out over the Sealer Sea, south of the Philippines. And I'd say that one, but two of the most notable missions we had was that one where we had to bail out, and the other was when the last mission I ever flew was they flew a surveillance mission over where they dropped the atom bombs.
Was it Nagasaki or
Nagasaki
Hiroshima?
and Hiroshima. And took us over there to see if they were flying the white flag like they were supposed to. And if they were,
came right just after they did the bombing, then.
That's right, after the bombing. And the thing that scared me most was jumping out of the plane the first time, and the second time was see what damage a bomb could do. And it was scared me when I saw the planes coming up on Nagasaki and Hiroshima. You see, this is six brown spot on the earth coming up. All we could see was street patterns. Everything else disintegrated, just swept out.
It's scary, isn't it?
Yeah, after we'd been dropping block bombers, or blockbusters they call them, on Formosa, we see a whole block go up, but this was something else. It was really something, and I never forget that. And the sad part about it, all the people that died in that blast in Hiroshima, it's just kind of sad.
I know. And unfortunately, it's a true piece of history. It's nothing you would feel good about, but you had a job to do, and that was the name of the game. Now, where were you after the bombs? Did you then go home, or were you on points, or did you have to stay back and do any sort of occupational duty?
We were on a point system. On coming home, you got 100 points. You could rotate home, and we were just about to that point when we went on our armed surveillance mission over the two places where they dropped the atom bomb. Of course, after they dropped the bomb, well, that pretty much ended things. And
was that area then radioactive? Were you subjected to any radiation, anything like that? Or were you high enough that it...
Oh, we were up high enough, and it's already over. But we weren't. We didn't get into any radioactive area. I don't remember what the altitude was that we flew over it, but it was high enough that we could just observe things. But it was quite an experience.
Now, being nosy, but were you in any way wounded or anything like that in any of your flights or hit?
No, I was fortunate. We never was wounded. We got hit a lot of times with shrapnel and ack fire, but that's about it. We got extra points for that.
Oh, yeah.
I was about ready to come home when we had that last mission to fly, and that was it.
Now, when you had a ditch, were you picked up by air sea rescue or submarines, or how did they find you?
You can't ditch a B-24. Those Bombay doors are designed if you try to skip it like you do a B-17 in the water caves in those roll type Bombay doors and
Just jamming
hits
it
that
up.
back wall, and then the plane just goes in a V shape and then goes down.
Okay.
B-17 you could ditch it, but you under wing, but the B-24 was high wing, and Bombay is what thing that hit the water first, and
Yeah, just like a big scoop.
it wouldn't scoop it. It came in those Bombay doors. They were designed to only support about 200 pounds weight, if it that much, in case the bomb got stung under somewhere. It would drop them out, and Bombay doors would go with it. But
How long were you in the service? How
oh,
many years?
I was in there I forget what the date when I first went in. Started flying, but it was around 1944, I think. And I got out it was there on Okinawa when they dropped the bombs. And after that, we got a typhoon come through there.
Yeah. I was there.
You were?
Bet your bippy.
You on that strip?
You on tan, us? We
Remember
helped pull the strips down back of the hill. We did all the quarrying. The damn road straight away.
that quarry.
Remember that?
Yes, I
We should
remember
get down
that.
back there and have practice. None of us were, if you will, combat. We never got in the line as such. But we found 2 or 3 catches where they had some Japanese rifles and some ammunition. And we got pretty good. We could shoot almost anything. But fortunately, they never shot back at us. Yeah, I was there when they had that thing. We had a big Quonset hut on top of a hill that was our mess hall. A big L here, like that. And we had some pictures taken of it when it got all done, and then we had a great big special meal. And then that dang high typhoon hit, and all you saw was a cement pad and pieces all around the whole back end of the hill down there.
I laid all night in water as a result of that typhoon. My tent, the ring thing in the top where over the center pole,
Yeah.
it tore loose from the tent pole, and then it formed a regular funnel down.
Oh yeah. And no matter where you hit, you were
So
going to get it.
I laid in water all night
Yeah.
through that typhoon.
Now, how'd you get home? Did you fly home? Take a boat?
We flew home.
Okay. Where did?
I was all that time in service and never did get on a boat.
Oh.
Never saw a boat.
How was it when you got home? It was a good time. Did you go right to Frisco, then you come back here to the East Coast, or did you get discharged someplace out on the West Coast and work your way back
we came
home?
into California. I forget which field it was, but they came into California. We got in about 2 o'clock in the afternoon and asked everybody what they wanted, and everybody was ordering bacon and eggs and milk.
Milk, yeah.
So that was something else. And I was sent from there had a bunch of, in charge of a group coming back to Scott Field for separation. That's where I took my radio school training, is at Scott Field at St. Louis.
One of the guys we just talked to was in Scott Radio and Navigation. Yeah.
Well, I wasn't so much
The
navigation.
world's getting smaller and smaller.
Yeah. Well, I took Scott Field for my radio training because it's close to my home in St. Louis, so
Oh.
I got to live in Belleville and had my wife stayed with me until I went overseas. So
And you got retired then, and after your service, what did you do as a job or making a living?
well, I worked for the Air Force before I got in, and I was drafted into the Air Force with a letter. They said when they drafted me, I had to go back to my same job when I got out, so I went back.
So you had job protection then?
Yeah, I went to civil service with at Jefferson Barracks, and from there I went later on to a mapping agency in St. Louis. I made all the maps for the Air Force.
Oh, cartographer?
No, I was a procurement officer, contracting officer. And I went to they kept changing the name of it every so often. I finally wound up with the Department of Defense. Defense Mapping Agency was where when I retired from in 1977. And in 1977, I just had a project on the Lake of the Ozarks. I built a house up there, so that's where I spent my retirement pretty much.
So you're a Yankee by transfer then, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But as far as the service is concerned, I'm just glad that it's all over and that we don't have to get in another one.
Amen.
And,
Well, I thank you. It's been
Yeah.
short and sweet, and maybe someday,
Yeah.
if you want to, come back and see us, and we'll do a more in-depth interview at the studio, or we can have some fun
Yeah.
and bring back some good memories. Show what you've done in the way of souvenirs, medals, and all that good stuff. If you'd like to do that.
I had the Air Medal with 3 clusters, I think it was.
That's one for every 5.
Yeah, every 5 missions.
Yeah.
And
Well, the fellow we had here this afternoon that came back up on the 25, Joe Whalen, he had the Air Medal with 7 clusters, a couple of Purple Hearts, 2 Bronze Stars. And I said, you got more fruit salad than the people that make Jell-O. And he's just a little bit of a guy, but he had 65 missions. Today we've joked about it, but today is flying back up from Hartford was his 66, and he said, and I walked away from every one of them.
well, that's what I tell people. I had about 32 and a half missions, and one more takeoff, and then I got landings in an airplane.
So you're still up there.
Well, we were fortunate. We were picked up with Air Sea Rescue pretty soon. But it is an experience when you stand on that catwalk and see there's nothing but water below you.
Just
where
had a
you're
good
gonna
luck
make
you had
it or
something
not.
on your back to get you down safely.
Yeah, they had those jungle packs, but just we had chest pack parachutes is what they were.
Yeah.
And mine opened up fine.
Well, good. Obviously, you made it because you're here. Okay?
Yeah,
Well, I thank you, and
well,
maybe someday, somewhere, somehow, we can get together. And I'd like to try that if you want to, and see what we can do. It'll be a lot more fun. You can bring this young fellow along with you.
well, I'm staying with him now, but I'll be 91 in November.
Who? 90?
91.
Another one of these old guys. Good Lord, us kids. I'm only 84, so I got to respect your age. But you made it. That's the important thing, right?
Yeah.
Folks, this is another little friend of mine here. This guy's becoming famous whether he wants to or not. Joe Whalen, you probably have seen his picture in the paper. His granddaughter made him famous. We helped a great interview, and he just happened to get a ride back from Bradley the hard way. Tell him about it, if you will, buddy.
Well, it's been one great blow after another, starting with the granddaughter. Everything that has happened in the last 6 months is unbelievable. And to be able to fly in a Mitchell after 64 years, it's unbelievable. You can't express the emotion, the tingle that goes through your body to just have all of that underneath you and just pushing you along.
Right.
But I'll tell you, if it wasn't for people like you and
Those guys out there.
Tom Porter and all the fellows, I'll tell you, if it wasn't for them and you, things like this wouldn't be possible. The amount of time that you devote to history is something that needs to be thought of a little bit more, and even brought a little bit to the kids in school.
Yeah.
They don't know what it is to sacrifice, but they sure will now that
Things are going kaput.
things are turned around, not only financially, but physically. Every aspect of life has changed in the last 6 months.
Amen.
And that started my change, but mine was for the better. these kids that are growing up today, it's going to be a tough road to hoe.
Now imagine having to change your life at his age. Good Lord, Nellie. But one of the things we're doing with numbers, if you will, it was some 60 years ago that Joe used to play games in one of those things. He had, to his credit, 65 missions. This one was 66. And he walked away from every goddamn one of them. And now this may be edited out, but by golly, this is a day when you can have some fun. Those guys out there looked at us, and there's more than one that didn't have a dry eye when those planes came in. It's a good memory. I'm choking up myself, but what the heck, life's like that. But anyway, I wanted to thank you again for what you did, and more important, the idea that you shared what you had with us. And that's the idea to all of you guys and gals. Don't be bashful. The story simply is this. If you don't tell your story, nobody will. And the bad part about this is every day that I check the obituary columns and I read the word was, he or she was a veteran of whatever war, that means they're not here and they can't tell their story, and that will be a blank in the history. One of the things we're trying to do, as subtle as it may be right now, but we're finding out that the Germans, the Japanese, the Chinese, and the Russians are very carefully reworking some of their history books so that such things as the Bataan March, Auschwitz, the bombing of Berlin, Hiroshima, Iwo Jima will never, never be thought of, because by carefully brainwashing and eliminating it, it'll be a memory that nobody other than the few people have. So you guys and gals that made that history, please come forward so that we can make darn sure that what you did will never be forgotten or changed. Again, Bob Stevens from the cold, damp Tamark here on Pittsfield International. Please come and see us. We're more than happy to try and do your show, but it will help the history. Guys like Joe and James, they're coming, but they're slow. We got lots of room, and the fellas here are talented. Boy, they'll make you look so good you want to buy your own picture. Okay? Again, thank you for watching. Come and see us.
Thank you, Bob.
Amen.
And I've had the biggest jump in my life.
Oh, yeah?
And it sure did wonders for me, and I'll tell you.
Where did you get the bill?
That's all right, too. Uncle Sam's got a lot of it.
Yeah. Okay, folks, we thank you. Between what you saw at the beginning and the last interview we had in the soggy, cold rain, we hope that it'll bring back some good memories. More so, hope that it'll get some of you guys and gals to come and see us. Again, the Veterans Forum is for you to express what you feel, what you did, and we're willing to help in any way. Again, we thank you for watching. Hope to hear from you soon. Stay healthy.